People don't want fracking. It won't take a penny off bills for the reason that I've set out. I don't believe some of the fantasies of Nigel Farage about the scale that we could produce from that. Why go for expensive, insecure fossil fuels when we can have homegrown clean energy that we control ourselves? Part of what we face in this debate, frankly, is people who are opposed to net zero wanting to jump on a bandwagon and say everything that we see is net zero's fault. The transition to clean energy is a massive economic opportunity, and we've got to manage that transition properly, and we take that obligation seriously. Don't listen to the people who want to use every difficult industrial situation to pursue what is essentially a culture war. I think that the right are engaged in an attempt to conjure up this sense that there is a mass revolt against clean energy. I actually think most of the British people do want us to take these opportunities that there are. Welcome to my department.
It's really exciting to be here, actually.
Well, we
some
love
heavy security.
I love politics, Joe, so it's fantastic.
It's very kind of you. So you're flying out to COP. You've gone for many years. Is it 20 years you've been going? Is that an overestimate?
Quite close to 20. I think the first one was 2008, so getting on for that.
Can you tell me why you go?
We contribute about 1% of global emissions, and while that may seem small, there are still plenty of reasons for the UK to take action, which I'm sure we'll discuss. But if we truly want to make an impact, and the fate of future generations relies on these choices, we must collaborate with other nations. Nearly 190 countries attend these international climate gatherings, and they've been doing so for around 3 decades. Real progress has been made. It's not as if nothing has changed in all that time. But the key reason to stay involved, to stay engaged, is that climate change is a shared challenge that demands a shared response, with everyone working together. When people think of COP summits, they often focus on major players like China, for instance, a nation that might commit to new targets yet still faces criticism for not pulling its full weight. From your perspective in those meetings, speaking with world leaders, do you feel everyone is genuinely aligned on the same goals? Or is the UK having to push others to meet their climate commitments?
I think everyone is on the same page in the sense that they all see in their own countries the impacts of climate change. And probably, some of your viewers may or may not know this, but I did this job 15 years ago, and I think it's much more apparent to countries. Every country sees these effects of extreme weather in their own country. So it's like more apparent about why we need to act. The economics has moved in a better direction. So when I was doing this job way back when, solar and wind will be the more expensive technologies. Now for lots of countries, they're cheaper than fossil fuels. So it's not just the kind of environmentally right thing to do, it's the economically right thing to do for now. Now, every country faces its own constraints, but I think there is a real will to act. And just to give you a sort of sense of this for your viewers, because people might think, well, has it made a difference? When I was at a very ill-fated climate change summit, the Copenhagen summit in 2009. Back then, the world was heading for about 4 degrees of global warming. Now it's headed for something like 2.5. Now, 2.5 isn't good.
Still not great. Yeah.
Still not great. No, still not great, but better. Yeah. Back then, the term net zero wasn't even really invented, or at least not commonly used. Now, 80% of global GDP or economic output is covered by countries that have a net zero target. So countries or states. So and just on this point about the economics, last year we saw double the amount invested in clean energy compared to fossil fuels. So it's easy to think, and I was just with Keir actually with some young people talking about these issues. It's easy to think, hide under the duvet, but actually the world is moving.
And it feels like there's tangible change then to be achieved.
Honestly, my biggest frustration is that there hasn't been enough real, measurable progress, but that doesn't mean we can give up. There's something we need to address directly. With 194 countries flying in from around the globe, many people ask, why is that even necessary? Why not just do it over Zoom? Well, the point is, these gatherings are a system of accountability. They remind world leaders and governments that they are answerable for their actions in an international setting. A small nation like Vanuatu or Jamaica, which recently faced devastating hurricanes, sits in the same room as China or the UK, giving the process a sense of global equality and democracy. Sure, technically it could be done online. But would it be nearly as effective? I don't believe so. Consider how complex negotiations really work. Think about any serious discussion in your own life. Is it easier to handle remotely, where people can switch off their cameras and multitask, or face-to-face, where everyone is fully engaged? These climate talks are like playing 194-dimensional chess. Genuine progress requires people to be physically present. Take the Copenhagen summit of 2009, it was on the verge of collapse. I had to step in at the last minute to keep things on track, and we managed to salvage it. That kind of intervention simply wouldn't have been possible on Zoom. Now, let's look at Libya, for example. You mentioned the recent hurricanes in Jamaica and the severe droughts in Libya. Both are clear signs of extreme weather. Many believe these are direct results of climate change, yet Libya has been reluctant to commit to several of the COP agreements. Will countries like Libya be persuaded as they experience these worsening impacts? It's an excellent question. Different nations will always hold different perspectives, and part of our challenge is to respect the democratic decisions of each state, including our own, while still finding ways to work together. Of course, that cooperation isn't simple. I can't speak for Libya specifically, but when you look at the broader picture, including nations like the United States, it's clear that every country's stance reflects its unique political and economic realities. The task is finding common ground in spite of those differences. We contribute about 1% of global emissions, and while that may seem small, there are still plenty of reasons for the UK to take action, which I'm sure we'll discuss. But if we truly want to make an impact, and the fate of future generations relies on these choices, we must collaborate with other nations. Nearly 190 countries attend these international climate gatherings, and they've been doing so for around 3 decades. Real progress has been made. It's not as if nothing has changed in all that time. But the key reason to stay involved, to stay engaged, is that climate change is a shared challenge that demands a shared response, with everyone working together. When people think of COP summits, they often focus on major players like China, for instance, a nation that might commit to new targets yet still faces criticism for not pulling its full weight. From your perspective in those meetings, speaking with world leaders, do you feel everyone is genuinely aligned on the same goals? Or is the UK having to push others to meet their climate commitments?
Any of the last 2 Trump administrations, they also seem to be rather reticent about net zero. And I suppose it's sort of spooking the public. It's spooking the US public, it's spooking the UK. You know, if the US have a poor view of COP, do you think the whole thing could collapse? I mean, would China still want to meet its obligations if the US doesn't have to?
Well, look, I mean, China, India, and others are coming forward to the COP with their plans. I mean, now, as I say, I want China to be doing more. I want other countries to be doing more, and that's part of the reason to be at the table. But the headline, look, the US has to make its own choice. President Trump was duly elected by the American public. He has a mandate. But overall, the picture I would see is of countries saying, we're going to carry on working at this. We don't want to give up on this. We don't want to give up on this cooperation.
Mm. Let's bring that down domestically now. I'm going to read you something that Nigel Farage actually said this morning. So he's been giving a speech. He's been talking about the North Sea. Mm-hmm. Let's get the North Sea operating, he said. Let's have a look at some of the new onshore gas fields that have been found in this country that will produce tens of thousands of well-paid jobs. I mean, you're not fond of drilling in the North Sea. What is the argument?
I'm not one of Nigel Farage. Look, here's the point about the North Sea. The North Sea is what they call a declining basin. Now, we've said we're going to keep existing oil and gas fields open for their lifetime. But we're not going to issue new licenses to explore new fields in the North Sea. Now, why is that? Because we both want to have a just transition in the North Sea to protect the workers there, and we want to make sure that we do the right thing environmentally, and I think we can do both. Now, what Nigel Farage sounds like he's talking about onshore is fracking, which your viewers will be familiar with. Fracking And by the way, this is true of the oil and gas produced domestically also. It's really important to say this. It's sold on the world market, right? Why did energy bills go through the roof when Russia invaded Ukraine? They went through the roof because we were reliant on fossil fuels, and whether they came from domestically or came internationally, they were priced at the same level. So Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a massive shock in those markets, the prices went up, and the British people paid the price direct to the oil and gas companies. Homegrown clean energy offers something different because it offers a fixed price for wind or nuclear or solar where we get to control it. And then on fracking. Well, people don't want fracking. I mean, go around the country and suggest to the people, to the areas that want fracking, whether they want it. They say no. It won't take a penny off bills for the reason that I've set out. And frankly, I don't believe some of the fantasies of Nigel Farage about the scale that we could produce from that. And why go for expensive, insecure fossil fuels when we can have homegrown clean energy that we control ourselves?
So when he says that bills are going to get cheaper if you do grant these exploration licenses, is he lying?
He's just talking nonsense. He's just talking nonsense. And also, in a sense, to the viewers who are watching this and thinking, well, you know, Ed might say that, the last Conservative government said more North Sea production is not going to affect bills, not going to cut bills. That was what they said. Greg Hands, Kwasi Kwarteng, two previous Conservative ministers said that. Now, it's really important. The oil and gas is going to be with us for decades to come. We do want to make sure we have a just transition for those workers. By the way we do that is in the new technologies as well. Carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, offshore wind. Because under the last government, they lost 70,000 jobs in the North Sea because they didn't build that future for them.
What other projects are you embarking on? What can people expect to see over the next year or so?
I think it's so exciting, this, because we just unveiled our Clean Energy Jobs Plan, which essentially forecasts an extra 400,000 jobs in clean energy by 2030. So that's a doubling of clean energy jobs. And what jobs are they? We're building new nuclear at Sizewell C, 10,000 construction jobs, and jobs also running the nuclear power plant. Jobs in offshore wind, jobs in carbon capture and storage, net zero Teesside. So the point is, for such a long time, people in this country have said, where are the good jobs of the future going to come from? And I had this experience the other day of going to Sheffield Forge Masters, which is a company in Sheffield, and just talking to the young people there about the opportunities that manufacturing for clean energy provided. You know, they feel they're building the future and doing so in a way that provides them with a living. And, you know, that's the point, I suppose. I feel like...
It's challenging, isn't it? Because your role focuses on long-term goals, and as a country, we often struggle to embrace long-term thinking. Does that ever frustrate you within your department? Take something like the Sizewell C construction project, it's years away from completion. It reminds me of that old clip of Nick Clegg, where he suggested it wasn't worth pursuing since it would take 10 to 15 years to build. I haven't actually seen that clip, but Nick Clegg certainly had a few memorable moments. The truth is, we're in the long-term business, and that's vital, but we're also in the better lives business. When I meet people working in clean energy, they tell me these are good jobs for the present, not just for the future. Take Great British Energy, for example. They've installed solar panels on the roofs of 250 schools and 250 hospitals, making an immediate difference. That's saving money on energy bills, freeing up funds for frontline public services. And honestly, I think we're just at the beginning of the clean energy revolution. One statistic I can't stop thinking about: only 1 in 20 UK homes currently have solar panels. In many other countries, the figure is far higher. So, one of our main focuses is figuring out how to make clean energy affordable and practical for everyone. It has to make financial sense. People can't be expected to pay excessive costs. Whether it's solar panels, heat pumps, insulation, or batteries, our goal is to make the shift to clean energy economically realistic for households. Now, when it comes to clean energy jobs, look at Port Talbot, for instance. I've reported there several times, and the messy closure of Tata Steel left many people out of work. The government promised to help them back into employment. Do you see those workers moving into clean energy roles? Absolutely. We're investing in Port Talbot's port so it can become a hub for clean energy projects. There's huge potential, especially in floating offshore wind power. So yes, that's definitely part of the plan. That steel would have been crucial for offshore wind production, exactly. That's why plans for the electric arc furnace matter so much. Our responsibility is to make sure this green transition is fair, because I completely understand the anxiety people feel about rapid change. Whether it's the North Sea industry or other sectors, we have a moral duty, and as a Labour government, I take that seriously, to make this transition work for everyone. In my own Doncaster constituency, a former mining area, many residents voted for Brexit nearly a decade ago. They often told me the same thing, we're voting for a better future for our children and grandchildren. What they meant was that they once had stable, well-paying jobs, and they want that again. That's the unanswered question so many in our country. Countries like China and India are already seizing it, so why shouldn't we? When towns are left behind, it's often blamed on the speed or scale of the transition. Take Grangemouth, for example. The oil refinery is closing, but no immediate replacement industry is ready to absorb workers, leaving a gap where unemployment grows. But to be fair, that's not about net zero. The refinery had long-term economic issues. Unfortunately, some people exploit these industrial challenges to attack net zero policies, turning it into part of a culture war. My firm belief is that the move to clean energy is a massive economic opportunity, and yes, it must be managed carefully. We take that responsibility seriously. But we shouldn't listen to those who use every difficulty as an excuse to undermine progress toward a cleaner, fairer future.